guys, I wanted to talk to you about doing some research for your teams for Vulcun. Sometimes you haven't seen teams play in a week, sometimes they're like fresh new teams, sometimes they're like tier 3 teams that you may not have heard of, but how exactly do you go about finding more information about teams that are playing in Vulcun? So let's see, Vulcun, available leagues, Nanyang EU qualifiers, lower bracket round 2, and winners finals. So let's see, MFS versus VS, NIP versus AL, 5GZ versus MBZ, best of 3. Let's say I want to find more about this matchup, NIP versus Alliance. NIP is Ninjas in Pajamas. So firstly, you can go to their Twitter page. I just pulled up a random Team Fire. We are Team Fire. Follow us to keep up with our players, upcoming matches, and more. And a lot of them post stand-in information on here just because it's the easiest to update. And make sure you click on tweets and replies, because sometimes people ask them, hey, is so-and-so playing with you guys? And they'll reply, no, he's not, or we have so-and-so standing in for him. And sometimes it's on their Facebook page too, Vega Squadron Esports tweeting, Navi Saniko is our stand-in today. This was a few months ago, but you get the idea that a lot of teams will post about who their stand-in is before the actual match, which is really, really important. Sometimes they have a super awesome stand-in, sometimes they have a terrible stand-in with no chemistry that you're just like, okay, I don't even want to put this player on my team anymore. And as far as the teams in general, you can go to Join Dota, and on the right side, you'll see the matches coming up. So if I click on Alliance versus NIP, this page comes up and it'll show me the last 3 matches that they played against each other. It looks like NIP has won all 3 of them, and they've won 2 of them 2-0. So combined aggregate, the record is 6-1. So if it were a best of 3, for example, I think it's more likely than not that it will be only 2 games, let's say. So that's pretty useful information there. And if you want specific information on each of the teams and how they performed, you can click on the specific link and it'll tell you rank. But in their recent matches, this I find way more useful. And if you want something a little bit more graphy, you can go on to Gosu Gamers and they'll have a graph of their ELO rating over the past, I think, like 12 matches, and it'll go up whenever they win and go down whenever they lose. And you can go like full team history and it'll show you who exactly they played, or you can just hover over the graph and see who they won against. Oh, NIP beat Vega. Vega is a pretty decent team. Maybe I'll put it more on Alliance, and you can kind of see, oh, how had they been faring over the past couple months. This is August 31st, so about 1 month ago. They've been going slightly up, whereas Alliance have been going slightly down. And probably the most useful resource I think is Dota Buff. Dota Buff has an esports section that you click over here, and they have all the teams, and this is really useful for like pick and ban information. But if you already pretty much know what they're going to pick, like Nature's Prophet every single game, then you can go down here and scroll down to the recent matches and see what heroes they are. They are always on the left side and their opponents are always on the right. And here's a lot of useful information. You can kind of see what style they play. Is it a lot of fighting? Is it a lot of like anti-mage split push? 4 protect 1? Is there like techies and they stall a lot? Is there Lina and going to be a lot of kills? Like, you want teams and players that play a very aggressive play style with a lot of kills. You don't want the heavy farming teams that get like 10 kills in 60 minutes because they don't get you a lot of fantasy points. So like a Batrider strat generally tend to be pretty aggressive and last pretty long because they're really good at defending high ground. So if you don't want to generalize from the hero picks, you can just generalize from the duration, and it'll tell you on average how long their games are. And let's see, if you want to click on the match tab, it'll give you even more information on that if you want more than their most recent like 10. And here it doesn't actually show any matches versus NIP. On here you can scroll down and find matches versus Ninjas in Pajamas, which is pretty useful. You can see how close it was, how many games they played against each other. So I clicked on first of these 2, and Alliance only got 10 kills with 15 assists. That's not that many. And NIP, they got 25 kills. They didn't die very much, and they have a ton of assists. And you can see how like closely they play together as a team. There's a lot of kills and not many assists. They're all getting solo kills. And how the early game goes, how their experience distribution, even more information on bans and picks, how often they get BKBs too. BKB is generally a little bit of safer play and not as many deaths will be involved. And then if we see the second match, it was a little bit closer, more kills for Alliance this game. They have Queen of Pain, so that's a little bit more expected for them, and looks kind of just out of control after like the 20-minute mark for them. So NIP favored for both of those. If I click on NIP for this one, their games recently have involved a seemingly large amount of Wisp, and they actually usually win with Wisp, but even if they don't, it's going to be a pretty long game, and Era is almost certainly going to have a good game. So I like picking up Era a lot. He gets a lot of kills. This is when they lost, by the way, 15 and 6 and 6, and a lot of assists on Handskin. You also want to see who doesn't die very often. Seal Kid tends to not die as often because they do draft him with Keeper Light a fair amount, who tends to be able to stay out of the fight. So if you have to pick a support, just try to pick one who picks a pretty safe hero, like Support Zeus or Keeper to Light. Crystal Maidens and Dazzles, sometimes they tend to die a little bit more, let's say. And clicking on their other match versus the Germans, we see that looks like the Germans won yet again. This one was a anti-mage game by them, and let's see, a fair amount of kills. As usual, Era does pretty well. Limp does okay. He didn't die uncontrollably. Johannes, I'm fan though. Oh my goodness, did he die a lot? 15 deaths. So I think that's talking about the very close to negative territory over there. So, you know, if I'm looking at this, I'm like, do I really want to draft the offlaner for them? How does he do when they play well? How does he do when they don't do well? But I almost always pick Era from NIP if I can. And if you're unsure about the odds and how they stack up, remember from Join Dota, I figured out that they were like 7-1 against them in recent matches, but how does everyone else think they're going to fare? Dota 2 Lounge or any other odds site, I like Dota 2 Lounge because it has a lot of volume and has 5,000 people betting on it 12 hours before it starts. So when it's a little closer, you'll probably have like 10,000 people's aggregates opinion, which is 60% NIP and 40% Alliance. So if I just had to choose one NIP or Alliance and I could only choose one of them, I would obviously choose NIP because they are favored, they are better, they came from an upper bracket, they've won in the last few matches, and you should pick your fantasy players from there on Vulcun when you are choosing them from the EU qualifiers. In this particular one, you probably want to choose in between 5JZ and BZ, but that's generally how you want to find out information. If you really want to be like super in-depth, you can watch replays of the teams and see how often they like aggro try and how they move around the map, but that is a little bit more research than I'm willing to do, although some people do probably do that, and teams that aggro try tend to get a lot more kills than teams that safe lane try because they're more aggressive. So there you go. If you haven't signed up yet, you can sign up at www.vulcun.com. You can use my promotional code Merlini Dota, spelled out here in the top right, for an additional bonus for your deposit. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I will be doing a video for ESL New York, which will be happening next week, and give you a preview on the teams who I think is going to do well, and the brackets have already been released. So thank you guys once again. Have a good one.